In this video, we'll see how we can do conditional rendering in JSX. For example, displaying one thing or another thing based on some state. In JSX, there are multiple options for doing conditional rendering. We can use the ternary operator, which is written as a question mark in the template. We can prepare a value via if-else before switching to XML mode and use that value in the template. Or we could have an if-else with separate return statements in each branch. So the first possibility is to use the ternary operator or question mark operator in an inline condition. As you can see in this example, based on the value of gameActive, it will display the one or the other content. The ternary operator which we just saw is best used in simple cases. In more complex cases, it might be better to use if or else statements. Here's the same logic as before, now represented with if-else. Here we're assigning JSX content to a variable and using it later in the template. As a further possibility, we could have multiple return statements in our component. This could be especially useful if we want to render something entirely different based on a condition. Sometimes we will just want a simple if condition without an else attached to it. In this case, we can use null as the alternative value. Null will not be rendered in JSX. In the example here, there's a Boolean value named isError. If that value is true, I want to render an error message inside a div. Otherwise, I don't want to render anything. It's also possible to use this shorter version, where we don't specify an else value. This is possible because of how the AND operator works in JavaScript. In JavaScript, that operator does not only handle Boolean values, but can also work with other objects. If the left-hand side of the operator is true or truthy, as we can say in JavaScript, then the right-hand side will be the result. If the left-hand side is false or falsy, then the left-hand side will be the result. And just like null, the values true and false will not be rendered in JSX. So that is why we can use this construct. This version of an if construct is slightly shorter than the version we've seen previously. But it can also be harder to understand for newcomers. This is why some projects will use it, but other projects will only rely on the slightly longer version that we saw before. Here's what you could do as an exercise. In the slideshow, hide buttons which cannot be clicked. For example, the previous button if the user is viewing the first image.